Hey Leah, what are we watching today?
Hey, we are watching one battle after another.
That's right. So we did what most cinephiles have done in the last 2 weeks. The 2 weeks of time this record is go see one battle after another, and the Paul Thomas Anderson's latest film, starring Leonardo DiCaprio, Sean Penn, Benicio del Toro, Regina King, and Tiana Taylor, and introducing Chase Infinity. So before I give any of my takes, Leah, we're very curious what your thought was on this film. You're a big Paul Thomas Anderson fan, correct?
Oh, yes. I would say he's at least in my top three, if not like top two, at one point, maybe top one director. What are you showing me, Patrick?
Uh, this is the most awkward, clumsy fact check in the podcast history. I think Michael slipped up and said Regina King, not Regina Hall.
Oh, I
But it's
did. I
my
said
fault
Regina
because I
You're
King.
was
gonna have
singing
to
the
redo this whole intro.
yeah, I was singing the score to Caught Stealing all day, so I
I was
must have
watching I was
implanted it.
watching 227 reruns, and I should have been watching Scary Movie. So I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Regina Hall.
I made the same mistake tonight in my feminist theologies class. There's this pioneering feminist theologian, Elizabeth Johnson. I keep calling her Beverly Johnson, like I think, founder of Essence magazine or something. I mean, just totally different people. I get it.
Oh, man.
Undersung Regina Hall movie. Just wanna now that we're on the Regina Hall subject, undersung Regina Hall movie. Support the girls. If you haven't seen it, check it out.
I
It's
haven't seen
pretty good.
it.
The girls.
Support the girls. Yeah.
Hmm.
All right, yeah. So Leah, what was your
Oh, I'll just
by
return.
the
So,
way, Regina
yes,
Hall is the unsung hero of this film. Just wanted
I
before
love her
we
as an actress, by the way. I was about to say, I didn't want to know if I should just jump into that, but I really love her, the way she just presents herself. She's just very captivating on screen. But anyway, yes, so I have historically loved his films. There are a few that I haven't loved, and unfortunately, this falls in that category, so we will get into it, I'm sure. Yeah, wasn't the biggest fan, but yeah, we'll talk. We'll talk about it. But this is, yeah, there's like Inherent Vice was probably my least favorite film. And this was, sort of based on a Thomas Pynchon novel, just like that was. So once that the credits rolled and I remembered that this was also based, and I was like, oh, this makes sense. This is why I didn't like completely was obsessed with this one. But also like really didn't like Licorice Pizza.
Oh,
Like sort of like he's turning into like a little bit of like the comedies peeking out a bit more in his films. And I don't know that I love that tone as much as some of the other stuff. So I don't know. Yeah, that's just sort of my initial take.
it's funny. I would say my top in no particular order, my personal taste, right? I don't think anybody can have, a definitive Paul Thomas Anderson list, right? But my top three in no order would be Phantom Thread, There Will Be Blood, and Punch Drunk Love, right? Which
Hmm.
are which are three of his most. I would add, well, like the humor is sapped out of those. I mean, people might say there's humor in Punch Drunk Love, but it's a sad humor. I
Right.
find it to be quite funny, but at the same time, there is this like not sad, melancholy, which is sad, but a different kind of sad. And Inherent Vice is not what one might have expected, which is fine. But this film, well, I'm very curious. Does anybody love this film? I mean, look, it has a 95 on Metacritic, right? The discourse is that this is the film of the moment. That this film is kind of like also not just film of the moment, the film we need right now. But a lot of people are saying in the discourse, and I'm one who would argue the film we need right now is Sinners from a few months ago, and it's still the film we need right now. But is anybody in line with popular sentiment out there?
Well, Patrick, I see you're about to speak. You go, and then I'll go.
I don't know if I'm allowed to. I think
You are allowed to say whatever you
no,
want. This is
Nkosi,
a
you
safe
can
space.
oh tell tell that to Ghetto Pat, you know?
Yeah, this isn't a safe space for Patrick to speak, not at all.
It absolutely is. If it's not a safe space for Patrick, it's not a safe space for me. Okay.
Oh no, no.
So,
Solidarity,
But
Leah. Okay.
I second one to the final moments of the film. Really, really enjoyed it. There's a lot. Um, there's a lot that, there's a lot to process in the movie and a lot to say that I'm sure we're going to get into. But I did think that this was a movie of the time, but also if it came out 20 years ago, would have also been, that was like one of the things too that stuck with me. If it came out like 20 years ago, even if it came out 40 years ago, I think it would be like a movie of the time. And I think it's a movie that it's a movie that would be beneficial to us if we still valued cinema at the center of some of our discourse, if that made sense.
Absolutely, very well put. I love the film. I love it. I think it's an instant classic. I think that it should get all the nominations come award season. I love it. I think it's great. And I also think that it is very overrated. I've heard some people say that it's the best American film in the last 10 to 15 years. And so for me, since seeing the film, I've been wrestling with and trying to balance, on one hand, my personal engagement with the film, taking it for its own merits and how much I enjoyed it, and also trying to understand it through the lens of the public conversation around it, which I think, by and large, can be characterized by one word: hyperbole. Again, I enjoyed it, but the people want to tell me it's the best movie in the last 10 to 15 years. I mean, listen, I'm glad it worked for you and I'm glad you enjoyed it, but I just want to be like, stop. I don't think it's the best movie I've seen this year. I don't think it's the best Paul Thomas Anderson movie I've seen. So that's where I am, kind of wrestling with trying to, yeah, my own enjoyment of it, but then also just kind of being really put off in some ways unfairly to the film by the way people are talking about it, which I think is just completely outlandish.
I'm so glad you said that, and I love that take, because one of my pauses was I really enjoyed the heck out of it, but I could see like 3 weeks from now hating it just because of the way that the public responds to it. Like I'm already there. Like as I'm going through it, I'm like, oh man, I could just see myself. Like if people are taking a certain angle on this movie, eeks.
Yeah. I just one sort of the what annoys me too, when you said it's not even the best Paul Thomas Anderson movie, and what I hate oftentimes is people get accolades for things like way too late for the thing that isn't even their best film. And I feel like that may happen to him this year, where normally I'd be like his biggest champion and want him to win everything. I'm like, this film, this is going to be the one you win Best Picture for, or I just think it's so misplaced, and I don't know why now this film is the thing everyone's obsessed with. Like, I just don't get it. And I don't know if it's people are sort of reading into it, what they want to see in it, or they like the themes and they're just like, I want this to be the thing. Or there's just like hype sometimes builds with movies like this, like where it's like once somebody says it's the best movie, then everyone starts saying like it's the best movie, you have to see it. And no one really thinks for themselves about it. So I don't know what's happening, but I always go into one of his films wanting to be obsessed with it. And I was really into it like the first third, and then it just started to slowly wane. And then by the end, I was just like, what is this? And yeah, and then then I got kind of annoyed about it. Like it was just, yeah. And then the fact that then I was reading reviews where everyone was like, this is the best thing that's ever been made. Now I'm just mad. So that's where I'm at.
I don't think the film asks anything of us. And the film doesn't have to ask anything of us. But sometimes films where folks can point to it and say, this film's amazing, and then not be held accountable to it. I think sometimes conversation can lean towards that, right? It is a film where we get to point and say, hey, what this person is doing, we get to feel good about ourselves to say, I'm not like a guy like Lockjaw, right? The Christmas Crusaders, those guys are ridiculous. And by the way, I loved every scene with the Christmas Crusaders. Well, let me rephrase. The first scene with them is fine. The scene when they're at the house, and like from that point on, like the Lacoste like shirt as well. That one dude, that actor I know quite well, and I'm forgetting their name right now, which I feel very bad about. It's just like all that was just so much fun. It was fun. But everyone in the film, right outside of, Ghetto Pat is incredibly flawed, right? So we can get to this later, but all the Del Toro stuff I found to be magnificent. Like from the moment he enters the film to the moment he leaves the film, right? All of that was just like I found it to be just absolutely remarkable, right? And if Paul Thomas Anderson wins Best Director for this film, right? The film is directed incredibly well, right? But I would struggle with Best Picture, but these things don't matter as far as legacy goes, right? But the film ends, right? The person with the most integrity goes to jail for the rest of her life, Regina Hall. And the film ends and where in a way where my reading of it is that there's the idea that we are meant to leave the film happy. That, Pat now is he's home with his daughter and she's going out there to fight, quote unquote, the good fight. And that kind of resolution in the film, people were able to walk out of the film saying, I'm not like this. I'm not like, I'm not like Lockjaw over here. And this makes me feel kind of good. And then people walk out. They might have disturbing images in their mind, but there's that ending there, right? That gives people room to breathe. And I think maybe that's where all that comes in.
But what is the film really saying? I mean, I had a problem with the morality of the film once I really thought about it. And even as it was going along, I was like, wait a minute. I thought it was saying something and now we're saying something else. And like, I don't know. I just felt like, are we supposed to idolize the Teyana Taylor character? She seems very erratic from early on and like becomes even more erratic. And then, she's supposed I feel like towards the end, like even as the film is ending, we're supposed to see her as being sort of heroic because even in that scene when they go to the convent, it's like, well, she wasn't a hero because she was a rat, not because she killed that innocent man. And so the whole time in the beginning, I'm thinking, well, she really messed up because she killed this person that she really shouldn't have killed. Like he was just there and she was getting very militant. But then the only reason they sort of went against her was because she ratted them out. I had a problem with that morality. And I wasn't sure. I feel like
I think it was a security guard. And I think it was reaching for his gun, right? Was that what we were supposed? Is that what we're meant to believe? And no, I'm not saying that she was right because she definitely because she shoots him and then she executes him, right? So like so if he's going for his gun and she shoots him, right? She stops him going for his gun, but then she executes him, right? So I think I think that's what was happening in that moment. I could be wrong, right? It's you only get one shot of the guy and it looked like a security guard. It looked like he was reaching for his gun.
He was definitely a security guard. I wasn't sure if he was, just trying to go closer or whether he was going to take out his gun.
Right, he's doing something, right. And then, I was debating with some friends of mine and I was sharing this conversation with Nkosi earlier, right, where, the French 57, did I get that right?
And 75.
75.
Thank you, the French 75. The French 75, I did not find them to be serious or disciplined. Del Toro's network, I found to be disciplined and serious, right? Outside of Regina Hall, right, very much was disciplined and serious, right? When they're all shooting and they're joking and they're cussing, not that any of these things are problematic, right? But Regina Hall isn't invested in any of that. When they show like they're all around the campfire, they're talking about it afterwards, right? Mm-hmm. So I think that I think Anderson was showing us a lot early on about who this group is. And there's a distinction from Hall in the group and Pat at his core in the group, and then Del Toro's whole network. It seemed as if most of the French 75 were invested in it for themselves. And it seemed like the film was offering us that. I also don't want to anything Teyana Taylor's character does, after she is raped by Lockjaw, that gets a little bit more muddled in blaming her, right? Like where like any motivation after he catches her and says, if you want to keep doing what you're doing, you need to meet me here. Any of her actions after that point, I find I want to put an asterisk on it as well. At least in my read of the film and watching the film.
Yeah, I think there's a lot there. I also I agree with what you guys are saying as far as there's moments where the film could call us to think deeply on some of these issues, but then by the end of the film, they make it simple for us. And the simplicity, I think, loses some of the more complicated themes that we're just talking about in the first half of the movie. There was one thing that that I was confused on. I had a different take, Michael, and I might have missed it. I thought that Regina Hall ended up giving up the location of Pat. I thought that she was going to federal prison because the choice was either death or federal prison.
At the very end.
Yeah, like that scene because when they're bringing her in, she has like tears in her eyes. I thought that she made the same choice.
I thought she was just
That,
sad because she got caught and she was like, well, this is it. I mean,
uh,
it's possible she was the one that told
yeah, I
Yeah,
Unwrapped.
might
we
be
don't. Yeah, you
wrong.
don't know what she says. She's given these choice friends. She leaves in handcuffs. So maybe she does. Maybe she gives information. But at that point, there's really not information to give.
Well, that was the ultimatum. It was like, tell us where they are, right? Like that was like,
Didn't they
tell us their
already
location.
know?
Yeah, but she was at the convent. They came to the convent is where they caught her. They
But what
caught her
was
at the
the
convent.
help me out? What was the ultimatum that they gave her?
I don't remember.
They gave her some information, like to share some information,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, that's good, Patrick, because I don't recall exactly what he says. In another conversation I was having with a friend, we were talking about, about Sean Penn's character. We're talking about Lockjaw, and someone had said, a comment was made about how much power he has and how dangerous he is. I'm like, he has power, but he's so wildly incompetent, right? Like he's in a position of power, but his second is the one who is incredibly competent and so scary, right? Like you have these positions of power and authority who are comical, who are buffoons, and they often get passes by folks because they act buffoonish, right? But what they're implementing is incredibly devastating and dangerous. So I found Anderson's piece, pulling it together in that way to be quite effective. I was not necessarily a fan of all that was going on with Lockjaw, but that right hand man was devastating anytime he spoke
Yeah.
to anyone, right? And when you're speaking to the kids and you're speaking to Regina Hall, so whatever he's saying to her, we don't know if she speaks or not, but at that point, there wasn't much that she can give to hurt Pat and Dora's daughter. And we know that by the end because they're free and she's not, right? And they're living they have a home, she's going out to do something, right? It's not like she changed her name again. Like there's this idea that their identity is intact.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I might be wrong. I just thought that was at least left up for interpretation. But
Yeah.
that second, the I wish I could remember his name. I was trying to find it right now, but um, I heard shout out to Unspooled, the podcast, that he's actually an interrogator for I don't know if he's like a military interrogator, like so he's not an actor. This is like what he professionally does, and like PTA put him in this, and like speaking to like the real scariness of him and the way he asks those questions like unwaveringly.
Yeah, I
But
was
that
gonna
was
say I felt like he wasn't an actor, and I didn't know if that was just his acting style, but now that I know he's not an actor, it totally tracks. But I thought he was perfect
yeah,
in that role for that reason because he felt like a real person.
yeah.
I mean, everyone was amazing. Like the acting is perfect, the tone is great. Like, cinematically or like technically, it's kind of a perfect film. It just didn't work for me emotionally and it didn't work for me story-wise. Like things just didn't come together. But yeah, as a director, I mean, the film is expertly made. I can't really say
I,
anything
I
negative
wouldn't
about that.
say I wouldn't say that Penn's performance nor DiCaprio's performance is perfect. My
Okay, that's
opinion.
fair.
I thought that I was not real keen on Lockjaw, and I found Ghetto Pat to be befuddling in many ways. The idea of him not, but I'm curious how I would have engaged with the film without those two actors in those roles.
Well,
Hmm.
And those are
that's a
the two actors
separate
right
thing.
there being
Like
taught.
So
being
it's
able
just
to
because
step
of the
back.
actors that you're saying, because you have an issue with those actors. Is that what you're saying?
And the choices that they're
Okay.
making as well. I don't think all of Penn's choices are choices PTA told him to make, right?
Hmm.
I know very specifically that PTA didn't have the Del Toro character Sensei fleshed out very much, right? He said in interviews, and Del
Hmm.
Toro came in with all these ideas, and those ideas were in the film. So I would think that I can't imagine that he said, okay, Penn, I want you to do this role exactly like this. I'm sure I would think that Penn
Right.
brought a lot of that to the role. And yeah.
But I definitely thought Penn was terrifying.
Hmm.
You thought he was
But it was
terrifying?
a little
I thought
over
he
the
was terrifying.
top. I mean, I will say, yeah, I think he was like the one like weak link in terms of the performance. It sort of, I mean, it maybe the first thing that took me out of the film was Sean Penn. I mean, I was impressed by it, watching him perform that way, but I don't know that it really worked because it just was sort of like this caricature of
Yeah, I'm
someone.
borrowing from Paul Schrader here, which I don't do, but he referred to Penn as peacocking around, and that's
Mm,
exactly what
yeah,
he was doing.
that's what it felt
And
like.
I
It's like,
just
look at me,
didn't,
I'm an
yeah,
actor. I can act.
I didn't, I from the walk to the facial expressions, just yeah, didn't do it for me. But just that's just me.
I agree. I think the craft across the board was great. I enjoyed Penn's performance, but it absolutely was a showy performance. It definitely was a peacock performance, and it will definitely land him some hardware come award season because people are gullible for that stuff.
Yeah.
Um, I love Leo, so that said, I feel like I've seen him play that character before and somewhat better in other movies, but I didn't have a problem with him. Uh, I have some notes here. I was thinking about the film throughout the day, and near the top of my page is the very question that was said earlier. What is this film actually saying? I'm still trying to figure it out. I think it does a great job of showing and pointing a lens on a lot of very bad things, be it white supremacy, be it the mistreatment of migrants and refugees, be it human nature. Specifically, I'm thinking about the fact that it seemed like all of the members of the French 75, when squeezed just a little bit, they would sell each other out. Right. So, kind of this nature of, okay, yep, we're down for the cause, but then the minute we're squeezed or, in a pinch, it's like, all right, I'm going to squeal. I'm going to, do what I can to protect myself at the expense of my comrades and friends. So I think it does a good job at pointing the camera at a number of different issues. But then I'm left wondering, what do we do with this or against these things? How do we respond to what we're seeing? I do think that this issue of armed revolution is right there. And I think it's something worth discussing, the merits of it. But I will say, in listening to this conversation, something that did cross my mind is he trying to draw a distinction between the French 75, who did believe in armed revolution, but were really portrayed as, incompetent on many levels, sellouts when the going got tough. And, I think he had a strong critique of them. Is he offering a critique of that kind of way of fighting back, juxtaposed to, say, the network that Del Toro's character had created and the ways in which they were fighting for, the rights and survival, of the migrants and immigrants? I mean, just do this conversation that kind of popped in my head is, okay, maybe that is what he's saying. And if that's the case, then it kind of does challenge some of my initial thoughts around what is he really saying? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, when Del Toro had the first opportunity, he sacrificed himself
Mhm.
for DiCaprio to be able to get
Mhm.
away.
Yeah.
And
It's
it was
true.
like, and that
Yeah.
seemed strategic. It was obviously strategic, but it seemed like it was part of the plan. Like this is what you do for the greater good, which was not what you saw
Mhm.
in the first chapter.
Right. And none of his network is showy, right? It's underground. None of it is shining a spotlight on themselves. None of it is self-congratulatory. None of it is saying, look at me, right? It is everything in the margins to serve those in the margins.
And that it's nonviolent as far as I remember, and just like very organized. And yeah, thinking about I'm really glad you brought that up, Nkosi, because I think that may be a point that the film is making. I didn't think about it at the time, and I just thought, like, what is all this? It just all felt so like disparate from one another. But if that is what he's trying to say, then I definitely appreciate that because I felt like he was sort of glorifying the revolutionaries. If I mean, I think that's sort of a kind term, the way you used it. I could also call them domestic terrorists. Like, I think it depends on, I don't really even know what their mission is. I mean, you get certain ideas of what their ideology is. Like, they're trying to, release prisoners and stuff like that and, hit corporate greed. And, you sort of get a tinge of what they're trying to fight for. But there also, are a lot of casualties and it seems like they're selfish. And so I was a little concerned the film was glorifying that, especially in our time right now, like in this direct moment. I thought, the wrong people see this movie and they just take the wrong things from it. And I found that to be very dangerous and a scary thought. So I thought like, okay, if this is what people are getting out of this film, like we're in trouble. Um, so yes, but I like the idea that there's a juxtaposition between sort of like a positive, productive way of making change and maybe not a productive, positive way of making change.
And even like there's that to get back to the scene in the bank, right, with the French 75, right? When Talon Taylor's colleague, right, she's walking up on the teller's desks, right, and she's spouting out who she is, and
Mhm.
it's like she is when I was watching it, it was like a character that PTA would have written 20 years ago, which she did start writing this 20 years ago, right, or even 30 years ago. No, 20 years ago. It very much felt like something he would write that he had written 20 years ago. And then when Tiana Taylor shoots the security guard, she just stops, right? She's playing a role, right, in a fantasy, and that's disconnected from the reality. And once she shoots that security guard, like that whole thing goes away. So there were those who didn't fully understand the implications of what they were playing, right? Of what they were doing,
Mhm.
right? They were playing, and the moment it got serious, it became devastatingly scary.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I agree. Yeah, that scene upset me in the moment. So like, what are these people doing? Like they just think like this is fun. And I think like her in juxtaposition to the Regina Hall character, like she's really in it to the end. Like she seems to be in it for the right reasons. She's really, she shows up when the daughter needs her years later. And so I think it's common for there to be a lot of people in these sort of radical movements that maybe aren't in it for the right reasons and just want attention or think it's cool or think it's like the thing to do and they don't really yeah, they're not following through with it in the way they should, and so then mistakes happen. So I think there's a good juxtaposition there too with those characters.
Yeah.
Right? And Hall saves the daughter, right? I mean,
Hmm.
without that, that would have been it.
Yeah.
Um, and she pays the ultimate price for it as well, right? The daughter has her secret cell phone, right? That's what tracks them down to the
Mhm.
monastery. The chase scene at the end is just the car chases throughout the film are fantastic, but the chase scene at the end is just
Yeah.
unbelievable, breathtaking. I mean, from the moment Penn hands her off, and like when there's that wide shot of them in front of the mountains of the desert, from the moment she gets handed off, like it is from the tracker dropping her off and then going back to the chase, it is mesmerizing. It just is all of it. And I think I could have done without Jim Downey gassing Penn at the end, but
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
Just um
I agree.
that was just more absurd, like silliness, just like like
I
why,
kind of
like
liked it because he needed his comeuppance, like he really thought he was in this group, and it just shows like everyone's just using each other. And I kind of liked that the way that his story ended. But yeah, it's all ridiculous. I mean, that whole thing, it's absurd, but it is reflective of some aspect of our society.
Yeah.
So I appreciated like the satire kind of it all.
it
Yeah.
felt like it was supposed to be cathartic, and I think for many it is cathartic. I didn't necessarily find it cathartic. Him getting the shotgun to the face, all right, he's off the board because no, now he's no longer a threat to Chase Infinity Willa, which we don't want her to be in danger, right? We want her to come out of this okay. So shotgun to the face, fine. That's not like for me, right? Like, sorry, problem solved. The ending, right, is like a cherry on top. Like, hey, by the way, this guy's really gonna get us come up in, so you can all leave the theater feeling with the pip in your step. And these days, I'm not leaving theaters with the pip in my step. Like, no matter what, I'm not. And some films are handling that well. I know I've said it before. Sinners, I think, handles that fantastically well. And a film that may be surprising to Leah, I think Superman handles that quite well as well. Like those are two that
Yeah.
come to mind
I mean,
for
I think of the
describing it.
movies. Sorry, just I think of the movies that I've seen over the last 6 months, this probably handles their ending the least well. It's not the right most articulate way of saying it, but like even like Weapons teaches you something at the very end. And I do think I just want to put it because I know there's a lot of buzz comparing Sinners to One Battle After Another, and every scene of Sinners is thought provoking, and you can get lost in thought and critique, and while at the same time it's just so entertaining. Where like One Battle After Another is like so entertaining, and then also compromises and makes things a little simple by the end. Because I think that's just I think simply at the end that's I think the message is like, oh yeah, the battle continues on, right? That's just what it comes on. Like the next generation keeps up the fight. It's like that's not really consistent with everything else that you've been saying in this story. But so I don't know. I think that
Right, and
there was a little less
also,
focus.
no, I was going to say also what's the fight, but before that,
Hmm.
I do want to say thank you, Patrick, because right, weapons handles catharsis very well, right? Like you
We
have
don't
a
talk about,
moment of
I haven't seen
catharsis.
weapons yet,
Wait, one
I'm
sec-
not
so
I'm
don't
not
give
going to
away
say I'm not going to give
anything.
spoilers. I'm
Okay.
just going to say that there's some I'm not going to give details.
All right.
There's a moment of catharsis that is it's hysterical, right? And joyful and hysterical, and a comeuppance, yet we're not let off the hook. And there are a few beats that happen after that
Yeah.
that ground us to hold on to what made the film fearful.
Yes.
So and that was done
Yeah.
brilliantly, right? So that definitely I think that goes in there. And yeah, this idea of, well, she's fighting the good fight, right? She's going out to a protest. I was a little sour on that too,
Hmm.
right? Like, so who's being served? Who's being protected? Like, what is that going to do? And I'm not saying protesting is ineffective, not at all. But I did find the next generation is going on to fight the good fight, and the question is that, well, who's being served? With Sensei's network, we know is being served, and they're being served on a very bare base level. Like they're being served just to survive, right? Like they're being served so that they can literally survive, right? It's not about being served to find joy, to find happiness, to piece together some remnant of what used to be the American dream. No, 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 no. They're being served so that they are not being tortured, so that children are not being imprisoned, that they're not going back to a space where they can, starve or be manipulated by other people in positions of power, right? It is basically like he is serving folks so that they can just survive for the time being. And that's how they're being served. And that's what he is doing, like on this very like base level. And also without that, right, then all those things would happen. And at the end, there is this question of she's joyfully going out to protest, and he is content and he is happy. His daughter is out there too, right, to fight the good fight. And that was not Miracle Max's chocolate covered pill for me.
Yeah, I hated the ending. I mean, I was just like, when that's last scene, I was just like, I'm done. I'm done because, yeah, what's she fighting for? It's all self-congratulatory. He's like, great, my daughter is this revolutionary. Like, it's just sort of like, I did a good job. She's like her mother. But what's even the protest about? And then the song, just, I was like,
I knew you were
done
gonna
with the
say that.
American Girl song. Now
Yeah.
I'm just like, I'm done. Like, what is it? Just turned into this like feel good father-daughter thing all of a sudden. It just felt very superficial to me.
I think there's an argument to be. I understand that point that you're making. I do understand it, but I think there's an argument to be made that it was like a little bit. I don't know if it was that either. Like I don't like I did like the end. I like the fact that American Girl played. That it was like because it goes against what Michael was saying, like the idea of what the American dream is. Like it did play a little bit into this different understanding of what the world is, this constant battle of the oppressed versus the oppressor. But I don't think that the movie brought us to that point successfully. Like I think there was like I think that was what the message was supposed to be, but I think there were too many missteps in getting there. So like I do want to say I'm gonna hot take. I thought the character Ghetto Pat slash Bob was like the most redeemable character in the movie.
I mean, he had heart. Like he was a good dad, you know?
He
He stepped
genuinely
up when he needed to be, when he needed to.
like he was a mess like in so many ways, but at the core of it he was like I love this kid and I'm gonna do whatever to protect the kid, but he was a mess
Right.
and he was ill prepared, and at his core he had some like deep characterological issues, right? I mean like that was whatever brought him to the party, and what his driving force was, but he kind of just desperately cared about his kid, above all else. That was, I found that
Right.
I did
In
find it
interviews,
endearing.
in interviews, right, it's very clear that PTA's intention is, right, that this guy, the fact that this guy just keeps at it and keeps getting there. He doesn't do anything other than showing up. When showing up is incredibly difficult for him to do, right? Like the success is that he shows up. He doesn't do anything when he gets there, anything effective when he gets there, right? But he shows up, and he needed to be there for his daughter after she, right, takes out the Lacoste polo. And any time in the film where he would be doing anything other than striving to show up, they did have this question like, let's just keep him striving to show up. Don't let have him do anything too heroic, right? The success for him is that he continues to strive to show up, and that he eventually does get there.
Yeah, I looked at this from a number of different levels. I mean, I think there's a beautiful story that's told about generations and what parents pass on to their children. I mean, there's a beautiful father-daughter story here. There's an ugly father-daughter story here as well. Penn and Willow. There's a beautiful, in some ways, as well as complicated mother-daughter story as well. I think on one level, when I exited this movie, I couldn't wait to go tell a friend of mine to go see it, because right now he's raising his daughter without much help from her mother. And so I thought that this was a movie that would kind of lift him up and, say, hey, you can do it. So I think there's some beautiful elements to these dynamics. But then there's also some issues I had as well. I like this idea of passing on to the next generation, the torch, and you all continue to protest and fight for what's good. But then there's also something in here that made me feel like activism was being reduced to just, a fad that one's into, or something that one can grow out of and mature out of. And, I think of folks, I guess, who may have been active in the 60s and 70s, and campus struggles and social justice struggles, who now are like, could care less, So I think maybe there's a critique
Who
there.
voted for
Or,
Reagan?
right. So maybe
Yeah.
there's a critique there. Maybe there isn't a critique. Maybe the critique is, yeah, this happens, and it's okay. And I don't think it's okay. I think the struggle, for justice is a perpetual one, and it's something that should be a lifelong struggle. So I don't know how I felt. And then again, at the end, like you all said, I mean, what was she going to fight against? I mean, it kind of gets back to this point, I think, of, what is this movie saying, or what is this movie actually, demanding of us or calling us to do? Right. I mean, if it's a critique of the way that, migrants are being treated right now, if it's a critique of, white supremacy, if it's a critique of these things, and we should have seen Willa at the end going to a target, to a protest that was protesting the same things that her father was fighting against, in his day, in a different way, right? But we don't know what she's going to. So in some ways, it's kind of like, I mean, I remember like in the post George Floyd era, where corporations were scared to death, and all of a sudden everyone was pro DEI, everyone was pro diversity, and all this stuff. I would see commercials from like some of the biggest corporations, and there would be commercials like protest and define yourself. And I was like, okay, protest what? Define yourself how? But at the end, it's like buy our product. So, it's like, it's just very shallow and not asking anything. Whereas I felt like a stronger statement could have been made at the end of the movie, like, hey, these things still continue. And we still have to be vigilant about these things.
And those corporations in 2025, right, Nkosi, they found relief. There was
Yes.
a burden to do those things. And in 2025 was, oh, we don't have to do that anymore. There's so much relief where we can let that go.
Right.
Right. And just, and just to pick up, just to piggyback a little bit when you're talking about like people in the 60s and the 70s, right? Maybe they held out, and they voted for Carter in 80, they voted for Mondale in 84, right? And then, they went through caucus in 88, but boy, oh boy, did they go hard for Clinton in 92, right? Like, like, yeah, you know what? Like Farm Aid, the Rainbow Coalition, that stuff, that's idealistic. Let's be practical.
Right.
Like,
Exactly.
let's go into, right, like a Wall Street economy,
Right.
right? Let's define neoliberalism,
Yes.
right? Let us become this thing and be practical,
Yes.
right?
Exactly.
And right, and so like there are those consistent arcs, and right, and the young, it's that, the idea that good to see the young, picking up where we left off, right? That whenever we're able to carve out a space for revolution, right, that becomes problematic, which is what was so brilliant about the ending of The Matrix Reloaded, right? Where the machines are like, well, we'll just create revolution, right? So that we can kind of like farm it over here and manufacture it and let it happen because people are prone to revolution. But if you give them some revolution, they'll be easier to control. Right, the architect spelled it out brilliantly. Like, hey, we're going to give you some revolution. We'll put it in this pocket over here. If those who are drawn to it, they'll have it. We'll recycle it every however many years, and that's how this system will work. This system will allow for a certain amount of revolution, and if that revolution ever kind of stretches the margins of what is allocated or allowed, right, then the alarm bells are going to go off, and there's going to be so much concern about what happens next. And I think we see a lot of that. I think there's so much of that in this country, post 1964, post 1965. And I think this film does a lot of this film in many ways is a great action film. As a film that's reconciling all of those things, I wouldn't necessarily call it great. And I don't want to put all that on Paul Thomas Anderson's shoulders either. But regarding the discourse, calling it great in that way, again, it is but by doing so, it's boxing it in and saying, see, there's time and there's space for that revolution, right? I think the discourse is fitting into that kind of narrative and assisting the architect in crafting it.
When Nkosi was talking, I went back to 2017 Pepsi commercial with Kendall Jenner.
I was just thinking about that one. Yeah.
Yeah,
That
because
was
that
like
was
the
like,
prime example of the worst.
yeah. Do you guys remember? Okay. Eugene, put it in the link. Let's put a link to the ad and so everybody can watch relive that.
Ugh.
And then, but also while you were talking to Kosi, before you were saying that, I was thinking about like where is she going? The question of like where is she going off to? And then I thought of Black Klansman, and I watched Klansman like so I wasn't going to the movies a lot in 2018 because my son was a baby, and I borrowed the Blu-ray from Michael, and I was like watching it, and the
Excuse
end.
me, excuse me, excuse me, excuse me.
I didn't
I
have
have
a
a
4K
4K
player.
steelbook.
It was I borrowed the Blu-ray out of your 4K steelbook collection or whatever you want to call it because I didn't have a
Good, got
4K
it.
player.
All right,
This was
I'm gonna
humble
qualify.
times for me. Um, so but like I just remember I was watching the movie and like the end of that movie like I just burst into tears. Like I was like, oh, like
Oh yeah,
oh,
it just came back to me. I was like, wait, oh yeah,
yeah.
that was amazing.
And
Yeah,
so
but
like
it was no Green Book though. Come on, it was no Green
Oh,
Book.
come on.
so I also
People
like
are gonna
shout out
think
to
you're being serious.
Michael, did you listen to the WTF Mark Maron Spike Lee episode?
I was when have thank you, Patrick. When having this conversation with folks about one battle after another, and the discourse around it, I referenced that conversation. I don't know if anybody's listened to it. I highly recommend everyone listen to that interview because what it does is Spike Lee. I loved Spike Lee's press tour for Highest to Lowest. The
Wait,
whole
before you say
tour.
that,
He,
I just want to say when they
wait,
reference Green Book, but go ahead. Yeah, sorry, you go ahead.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking. I am going to reference it. I'm going to talk.
Okay.
I want to get to it. But this entire tour, more so than in any other moment, in my opinion, right, for me anyway, and watching interviews with him, he has arrived in a way where he is now a master with all those others who are deemed masters, as he should be. And there is a joy and a calm and an ease in his conversation and a comfortability with the status of it that I love. There's a joy in it for him. Teaching at NYU, talking with other directors about the films of the moment and how they interpret him and the work that they're doing, his relationship with Denzel Washington, and then all of that is in the WTF interview, except for when Maron says to him, asks him, so you got the Oscar for Black Klansman. So that must have been a relief, right? You got that taken care of. And there is a pause. There's a pause for Spike Lee. And he references Driving Miss Daisy and Do the Right Thing not even being nominated, as it should have been for director, 1,000%, right? And the fact that, right, that Daisy wins, and then 20 years later, right, here he is again, nominated, right? And then Green Book wins. And he's just kind of like, he's like, yeah, of course, the Oscar. And at the same time, he's like, come on. But like the thing in his voice, right? Like the pause, the inflection in his voice, there's a pause there. And maybe I'm misreading it, but it reads to me as in art and in our greater culture, there are influencers with power. Whether it lasts or not, it's not a finger on the pulse. They have a grip on the neck of the pulse to make sure it's pulsating the way that they want it to. And if you're not doing that, they're not going to permit you to exist in a certain space. And one can understand that they're wrong, and it can still be painful as hell and enraging as hell. And I'm not saying that for Spike Lee, like he's enraged, but that pause spoke volumes. And it was the only time that I've seen him in the entire press tour, and I didn't catch everything, right? Have a pause like that, because there is a weight to it, and it is palpable. And we're not talking about, someone like David Duke not digging Do the Right Thing. We're talking about so many folks who hold their heads up high, with the capital P for progressivism.
Well, that's why the Oscars are irrelevant. I mean, they do not have their finger on the pulse. It's just a popularity contest. So, it really doesn't matter at the end of the day. But yeah, I get it. I mean, I get that it must be painful for him. I mean, it's painful for me as somebody who loves the Oscars and really wanted it to be like the pinnacle, the decider of great art. And then as I've gotten older, I'm like, oh, it really isn't. I need to stop like hoping that the right thing will happen. And now I'm just like super cynical about it. But yeah, if it hurts for me, it's definitely got to hurt for him.
There were so many films that year that talked about race in a much more complex, nuanced, deeper perspective. I mean, there was Black Klansman, there was Black Panther, there was Blind Spotting. I mean, there were a whole bunch of, films, and then Green Book wins it. It's just like, it's wild.
But and
I
just
do.
want to,
Oh, go.
sorry, I'm sorry. No, go ahead, Nkosi.
It's going to be a totally different point.
Okay, let me just real quick, because I just want to just give credit to the point of we named the movies, but Mark Maron and Spike Lee made a point not even to respect the movies by naming them. It was like, what was the other movies? Like, I don't know. He's like, but the guy was driving. He's like, I don't even know. But he's like, yeah, I think I lost to another movie where like a guy's driving somebody around. It was just like it was that quick,
and again,
it was so powerful with so little.
And again, these films, right, particularly, right, Green Book does not ask anything of us. Asks nothing of us other than self-congratulations. But Nkosi was all going in a different direction.
Yeah, and maybe I'll table what I have to say till later. Yeah.
No, well, let's go.
What was I going to say? So prediction, going back to something that was said earlier, that PTA may actually win Best Director for what I think we may all be in agreement about. This film is not his best film, or at least not our favorite PTA film. I think we may have a similar kind of Al Pacino, Scent of a Woman, Denzel Washington, Malcolm X situation now, meaning that year Pacino won for Scent of a Woman, really to award him for not winning for so many other superior performances prior, Godfather, you name it, Serpico, you name it. But that was also the year Denzel did Malcolm X, which I think is his greatest performance in his, GOAT level career. I hate that so much of my thinking about One Battle After Another has been in juxtaposition with Sinners. I hate that, because I want to take this film on its own merits. But the hyperbole again around it and the conversations around it have really made it hard to detach the two. Again, I think this film is great. I think it deserves all the nominations. For me, Sinners is the best movie of the year. I think it, like Michael said, it asks more of us. I think it's saying more. I think it's just operating on a different level. And I think as a whole, it works for me more. I would love to see Coogler win director, but he may not get it. Now, I don't want to say it's a direct parallel to Denzel Pacino, but I could see a situation where someone who I thought should get it doesn't get it. And someone who I love, who should have had like a whole shelf of Oscars up to this point, finally gets his own. I wouldn't be upset if PTA gets it. This is a great film again. But another point that may be worth talking about, again, this inability to separate these two films. A number of people have noticed the reaction that Variety gave to Sinners as opposed to One Battle After Another. So if you recall, when Sinners came out, it blew away box office expectations after its first week. But Variety ran a story that following week, which asked questions about what is the profitability of this movie. Now, this is a R-rated genre horror movie that surpassed all expectations. And Variety's like, okay, yeah, this is good, but like, is it really going to make some money? And a whole lot of people jumped to Sinners' defense. Yeah.
Just real quick.
Yeah.
Sorry. Just to
no. I'm
rambling.
Jump in. Yeah.
Right. Like opening Easter weekend, right?
Yeah.
Like for me, like I found it to be an incredibly spiritual movie, but like people would see it as a horror film, right? The Grindhouse films opened Easter weekend and got destroyed. No one saw them. Like, why would you open this kind of film on Easter weekend? It opened Easter weekend and killed, pun intended. Like it just did, right? So even that, right, is a feat.
Right.
Guys, sorry, I just want to let you know, Eugene threw in the chat, Variety is a current sponsor of the pod.
Oh, great.
We wish.
Yeah,
be now.
exactly. My bad.
No. That's it. Hey, we don't hold back. That's the level of integrity we have. We're not the French 77 or whatever. The 75.
That's right. But I'll speed things up. I mean, long story short, Variety wrote this critical article about Sinners, despite it being a runaway success. A lot of people jumped to Sinners' defense, and it's like, okay, in what world does a movie like this pull in the money that it did, and it be considered, people questioning its success? And then, of course, the film went on to make a ton at the box office. But a lot of people have noticed that One Battle After Another came out, a film that had a much higher budget than Sinners. And its first weekend at the box office, it brought in considerably less than Sinners. And Variety ran an article which acknowledged this, but the overall theme of the article was this is still a triumph, and it was a glowing praise of the movie and its box office results. So this was not lost on a lot of people, this kind of juxtaposition, this kind of hypocrisy. We can talk about what are the reasons behind it. But it's just another example of, for me, why it's been difficult to kind of separate these two films. And that's a little frustrating, but it also is what it is.
Yeah. I mean, this conversation is going to continue on over the next, 9 months, hopefully. But like Sinners, as far as whatever, they both seem like they're blockbuster films that are masterfully made with a deep talking point. But like Sinners does the work. It does the work to cause us to ask complicated questions. And One Battle After Another makes it so simple and leads us to the same old conclusion that gets us nowhere. And that's much more like appeasing to the good people at Variety. Based on my lengthy conversations when we were negotiating our sponsorship deals. Sorry,
and to a mass audience as well, which I think is what these are films that have a mass appeal. And I think it's when a film has a mass appeal and it's saying something is when they're like, oh, Oscar bait, because, the films that just have something to say and don't have mass appeal don't get any attention at all. So it's like when there is, that combination of things, I think then it's like, oh, okay, we can start working. So I feel like those are the two films this year so far that have done both. And that's why there's some sort of comparison. But I'm
Yeah.
sure there are many other films that have said great things that no one's talking about as well, which is always sort of the problem with Oscar films. It's just like the thing that gets the most attention.
Right. And to be fair, if I was going to be honest, I mean, they are my two favorite films of the year at this point. So, it also kind of makes sense why they're stuck in my head together. I'm very curious as to your thoughts on both of these films in conversation, Michael.
Well, I wouldn't put One Battle as my second favorite.
Mhm.
I go number one is Sinners right now. Black Bag. I love Black Bag. That's number two. And I outside of the confrontation between Lex Luthor and Superman, Superman only grows in my estimation. That's number three. And if that were different, then I would probably I'd be in a lot of trouble with my 4K bet with my buddy. But no, I have not separated. I have no problem when you were talking to Kosi, I was thinking not me, because I have no problem not separating the film from the discourse for either of these films because they're often not separated from them in the discourse, right? It's just and people wanted one battle after another to be a success to create the discourse, so therefore it is, right? I mean, just this week there were so many articles written about how one battle after another grosses 100 million globally. What in the second week? It grossed 100 million globally. It cost 170 to make. It's not getting that back, right? And it's like, what a success, right? Now, do I think that DeLuca shouldn't have given right 170 million to PTA? No, give PTA all the money all the time, right? As well as other directors, right? That's not what I'm saying, right? And in Warner Bros. And maybe if One Battle, I've been reading a lot of articles about Heat 2 right now, right? And if One Battle maybe had made more money, Warner Bros. Wouldn't have passed on Heat 2. They just passed on it, and Amazon MGM's likely going to do it. Unfortunately, in my opinion, with DiCaprio circling the role of Val Kilmer of Krista Chandler's. All that to say, like I don't mind talking about the film while talking about the discourse around it, and even letting it not shape but color my opinion. Very much so, let this film speak for itself. I can actually I can let a Woody Allen film speak for itself because Woody Allen's deviancy is all over his films, right? But for the most part, right, I like to bring the artist into there as well. And the discourse into it as well in a variety of ways, even and whether it's fair or not fair, and then talk about how it is or isn't fair as well when talking about the film. A film that I recently wrote about, which is funny, like, Steven Spielberg's Hook, right? The director, like the discourse around the director was all over the discourse around that film, as is many of Spielberg's films as well, right? But so just talking specifically about these two, I mean, Sinners asks so much of us from the second it opens to the second it closes, right? Not the finale of the film, not the midsection break, but This Little Light of Mine all the way at the end to the end credits. And it is a film that offers us resolution, offers us an ending where the protagonist has a happy, long life doing what they love, yet leaving us with these uncomfortable questions that the life of a vampire is the only escape for certain members of the American population from an evil that has yet to be destroyed in America, right? All of those vampires are wiped out. That entire coven was wiped out outside of those two. And it seemed like they didn't create a new coven, just the two of them who were left, right? And, those Klansmen were wiped out, but they're a dime a dozen, right? I mean, they're just like, once those Klansmen are wiped out, there's a whole crew of them next town over. So there was no eradication, right, of the evil that is eternal in Mississippi in that film. And Sinners grapples with that, invites us to grapple with it as well. And even if we're not consciously doing so, at our core, it's pulling at something. I don't necessarily, I think One Battle makes us, I think there are scenes in One Battle that are uncomfortable, incredibly uncomfortable, and executed incredibly well, right? When the member of the French 57 gets the hood over his head and is taken out of his apartment, that scene is beyond terrifying. Any scene with the interrogator, is terrifying. He is so calm. He presents as reasonable most of the time. When people are afraid, he acknowledges their fear and does not push. When they are cocky, he threatens their families. Right? There are these scenes in the film that are incredibly unsettling and that hopefully stay with people. But the button at the end with American Girl opens a doorway to leave the theater not thinking about anything that's unresolved. Right? When American Girl played, I immediately thought of, and I only saw this in the theater, my theatrical experience seeing Dogville, Lars von Trier's Dogville. And the song that plays at the end is Young Americans. I believe it's David Bowie's Young Americans.
Yes.
Right. And I found that to be perfect. Like I that ended and I'm like, way to punch me in the gut, Lars von Trier. Right. Like that worked fantastically. And I actually do think when this ended, I thought of that because I do think that American Girl could have worked. And with parts of the film, it does work. Right. I can see that working, but because there are, I don't want to call them holes, right? But maybe for me, there's these holes in the film, or pieces of the film that aren't as even as the others, or aren't as clearly definable as others. That leaves people saying, well, what is this film about? It doesn't necessarily work. And it left me in the theater irritated. I felt like the Grinch puzzling till his puzzler got sore in the snow when the film ended.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know if it's because it felt very mainstream, like that. I also saw Dogville in the theater, and because Dogville is so like sparse and it's just like such a spare movie, and then having this sort of like pop song play, like it just felt so well juxtaposed that you didn't expect it at all. This felt very expected. Like the film was starting to get more and more mainstream as you watched it, and then this song just sort of sealed the deal. And I was like, all right, I think it wasn't a surprise, like something that popped up and you're like, whoa, that was such an interesting choice. So yeah, it just really bothered me. But I'm glad I wasn't the only one.
I want to be very clear, right? Like there are scenes in this film. I actually think this is, if I had to rank my PTA films, this is at the bottom for me, the whole list. And there are scenes that will never leave me, right? Like the Christmas Crusaders at that house, right? The music playing, the conversation, the Christmas Spode, amazing. Like just the color of the blue Mustang, it was perfect for like when that Mustang is following them, I'm like, oh, it's gotta be a Christmas Crusader because only someone like that would drive that color Mustang. Like fitting the narrative of the film. There was that entire chase, right? I know some people in the theater around us when we were watching it were getting sick up and down the hills in IMAX. But I was so into it. I found that to be, I mean, just Anderson, it's just fantastic, right? So there's so much of the film, and also the film, like what Anderson can never not invite conversation. The film does invite conversation, right? But the way that people are leaving, right? Like again, like the discourse, right? I leave the film and I want to talk about it, right? No one talked about The Master the same way they're talking about this film. And The Master, right? Like no one even talked about that film. I mean, some people are and that film is like there's a lot going on there, right? And it's just there, right? There is something, I guess, why I think talking about the discourse is of value is because there are films that people want to talk about, and the question is, well, why do you want to talk about it, right? Like going back to Spike Lee, like when Do the Right Thing came out, right? And even since that time, having taught it and been in rooms when it's been taught, people want to talk about that film to justify Sal's behavior and to condemn Mookie's behavior. Like from the moment that film came out. So why do you think Mookie threw the trash can? Like immediately, first question, like for the most part, right? If there is, in my experience, a white person who sees that film, the very first thing that happens when that film ends is, so why did Mookie throw that trash can, huh? He shouldn't have done that, right? Like, and wanting to talk it out so that they get to a place where they're comfortable. rather than sitting with it and being like, man, that dude only threw a trash can after Rita Rahim was murdered. He only did that? And then, right, and then forget Sal and everything else, right? I find discourse to be valuable because it speaks to where film culture and even maybe the greater culture is when they're watching films and what they value. For something like for this film to get the kind of attention that it's getting and being valued in its way, and I've said this already, I do believe, right, it goes back to this idea of everything has its place. In this film, everything has its place. And people are quite comfortable with that. And they leave the theater feeling like everything has its place and be hopeful about that.
Yeah, I wonder if it sort of simplifies just fighting, like being political and all of that. Like it's not showing the dangers of repercussions of that, in society. Like it's all very like, oh, like fighting is fun and being a revolutionary is fun and she's going to be fine. She's just going out and protesting. And I don't know. Yeah, I don't think it really addresses like the true nature of being in that world and the dangers of it, and the cost of it. So I think it sort of glorifies it in a way that makes it seem like it's all safe, which is also I think is kind of reckless.
And there's this idea of like what is fighting, and going back to Superman, which I know Patrick and I liked a lot. Why we liked it so much, is because fighting meant being kind, right? Fighting meant like doing something on behalf of someone else or for someone else, right? Like that was a clear message, right, in that film. And the conflict is reconciling how to exist in a world when that is what your version of fighting is, right? And what we're being offered here, there are these various versions of fighting. And the version that we leave earliest in the film is the most dangerous to power and the most effective, which is Sensei's fighting.
Right.
And even Sensei's crew, which right, like when they are protesting, right, they are careful to follow the rules of protest. So much so that Lockjaw is like, all right, well, they're gonna follow the rules of protest, so we're gonna pretend, right, we're gonna sneak someone in to throw a cocktail, right, so that we can justify now being violent, right? Because they're not going to let us do that. They're not going to encourage us to do that. They are again, right, something the French 57 is not. They are disciplined in what they are doing.
Yeah. I feel like this is making me think about an issue that I always think about with movies, which is sort of like what is the danger of people maybe not even understanding like what a movie's saying. Like I know Michael and I, like I think we've talked about this before in movies. Like I remember there was one movie where that Mark Wahlberg war movie, what was that thing? It was based on a true story where they get stuck. It was like him and Ben Foster and some other guy get stuck in a mountain or something.
Yes.
And I remember
Lone Survivor.
Yes.
Lone Survivor.
And I remember we had a conversation about this because I was like, I felt very like patriotic, like recklessly patriotic. And I felt like people are going to watch this movie and take the wrong message out of it. I forget like exactly what the context was, but I remember, you sort of felt like, listen, like, people are going to take what they want out of it and the movie isn't for them anyway, or something like that. I don't know. Maybe you can remember more of the.
Peter Berg's the director of that film, and he did Patriots Day as well. And he had a series, he had a series of films during the late aughts where, I think Lone Star and Patriots Day are companion pieces in that he's showing things in a way that similar to Catherine Bigelow, but in his own way, that he's like, I'm going to show this, I'm going to do this, I'm going to try to be realistic, right, in making a film, right, cinematic like realism, right, and tell the story in this way. With Lone Survivor in particular, I thought they worked very hard to have viewers mourn the loss of the team that went out outside of the lone survivor, right, played by Mark Wahlberg, and also, and at the same time, show an incredible amount of empathy for the community, the Afghan community who protected Wahlberg. I thought the film worked hard to do that also. Mm-hmm. And and there are films during that time that did not do that. American Sniper did not do that at all, right? I guess that's a war, that's the war in Iraq, right? But like they did not do that at all. And I think a lot of people like went to see Lone Survivor, and it was one of the few. I think it was one of the few films of that moment that they showed pictures at the end of the relationship that developed right between the community that protected Wahlberg's character, right, and that Marine. So I think when films are trying, I thought that film succeeded, but even if one thinks that film didn't succeed, when they're trying, I think there's effort there. There's points awarded for trying to do that. And there are plenty of films that don't try to do that. And I do think that there are films that are completely unconcerned with that, and I think all of that is worthy of the discourse. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't work. And I think that a film that I was thinking of when you said that, Leah, was Prisoners, right, which I liked a lot, and you did not enjoy, right? But someone could watch that and get the wrong idea, right?
Right.
Right, that because that film, there are a lot of things that happen in that film that are incredibly problematic, and someone can justify like, well, that's how this guy was able to do this, and this, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that film is very much saying like, nah, I don't know. Like that film's not saying that. The title of the film implies that they're all prisoners and they're all creating their prisons in a variety of ways. And maybe there's relief if they're working to reconcile or brick by brick take apart the prisons they built for themselves, right? Maybe people aren't gonna be, say digging that deep when seeing that film. That's the hope, right? I'm very curious. Again, this goes back to what you've asked, what Nkosi's asked, what I've asked in this podcast as well, right? What is the intent, right, of this film? We know how the vast majority of people are receiving it, right? And I'm very curious what the intent was as well. And I think that from interviews I've heard of Paul Thomas Anderson is that he has a screenplay that he's been working on for 20 plus years, that when Del Toro came on, he really fleshed out that whole sensei piece. That really wasn't his focus. Del Toro helped to make that a focus, right? And it sort of so you have almost like these two narratives, and I think they complement each other very well in how different they are. But then regarding Ghetto Pat's story and that, right, I don't know if he have an ending? Did he have this whole story and he just wanted there to be a happy ending for the father and the daughter, right? And was he just focused on that for the end? And does that make it and is he just telling the story in this current context, and then people are just losing their minds that it's being told in this context and running with it, and like as Nkosi is saying, just hyperbole, right? They're just taking it and running. It's lots of open-ended questions. For me, it just ends up to a film that's going to be worthy of conversation for years to come, but one that doesn't necessarily bring it home.
Yeah, I'd love to know more about his perspective on the film, which is the missing piece for me. Like, what was he trying to say with the film? Why did he want to make this film? Because I really don't know what. I mean, we've, sort of inferred things and proposed certain points, but I really don't know if we're right about what he wanted the film to be. Like I really don't know what I took away from it. I think we're sort of reading into it like, maybe it's this, maybe it's that, maybe this meant more than it's supposed to be, but I really, I don't know. I'm kind of left just like, I don't know, which I never like feeling. I love when a film ends and I'm just like, oh, they just like hit the landing and like I immediately feel it all like come together. And I just feel the opposite kind of with this, which is not a good feeling, especially for a Paul Thomas Anderson film. I'm really disappointed, but I'll recover.
I've got my hard 8 blind spot. I'm waiting for Criterion to give us a hard 8. Today it was just announced. I sent the link to Nkosi, Boogie Nights on 4K, so that'll be exciting. Eugene, after I sent you the Edward Scissorhands link, I felt bad sending you the Boogie Nights link, but it's up. Eugene, I sent him the Edward Scissorhands link, and he's like, "Oh man, another 4K to buy." Nkosi says it, but I know he's going to order it anyway.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I was very excited to receive the link, and I stepped out of my office into the hallway because the Wi-Fi in my office is terrible. So reception is terrible. So placed my order immediately. I mean, I have to say, again, I enjoyed this movie. My favorite PTA movie is There Will Be Blood. Love it.
Amen.
But I Michael, when are we getting the 4K for that?
Can we do a Paul Thomas Anderson retrospective podcast season?
I I would hope. I mean, Criterion has a relationship with the Coens, so that's why we got No Country for Old Men. And I'm bringing that up now because No Country for Old Men, I think, was produced by Paramount Vantage or Classics, whatever, maybe Vantage. And Weinstein was involved, I think. Maybe they weren't, but Weinstein was definitely involved with the Weinstein Company and Miramax with There Will Be Blood. I don't
Yes,
know if
yes.
Paramount have a stake in that too. So that one is, I don't know I don't know what that looks like. There's no way they're not trying to work to make it 4K because it's catnip for us, right? I mean, our people, like when that comes out on 4K will lose their minds. And those are like Paul Thomas Anderson films are fun. I guess why I say like There Will Be Blood and Phantom Thread are companion pieces for me because they're steeped in reality and they're just ludicrous, right? They are the best kind of ludicrous. They are so magnificently detailed in reality, like Phantom Thread down to the stitch, pun intended, right? And it is absurdly ludicrous. I love it, right? Like the last line, like I'm hungry, like I'm leaving the theater laughing out loud, right? Applauding, like 10
It's
out of
like I'm
10.
done
Roses
with There'll Be Blood. Isn't that the last line? He says I'm done.
Yeah,
Ugh,
yeah, yeah. I'm done. Right. I'm done. I'm
perfection.
done. Right. He beats him to
Perfection.
death.
Yeah.
Right. With the pin. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And everything about that film is devastatingly serious and absolutely hysterical. Right. And he moved into this like era of doing that. And now he's moving out of it. I mean, The Master is
Mm-hmm.
absurd, right? That scene where he's working as the photojournalist, right? And the family beats him up in like Macy's or the department store. Right. It's the song at the end. Like it is terrifying and also absurd. Like he did a really fantastic job of balancing all that. And I didn't necessarily find that in this film. I found this film to be like pieces of a Paul Thomas Anderson film from the last like 25 years. Like
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, oh, there's that era. There's this, like and also there are pieces of that plus the master of the director that he is, like on full display, right? And as well as the desire to make an action film, right? I mean, oftentimes, like when Leah and I would be walking to work or walking home from work, and we both lived in Manhattan, I would talk about a film, and I'd say, "Hey, I just saw this film," and Leah would roll her eyes like an action film. They're like, "Well, PTA liked it," and, and he
Doesn't
would be
change
like,
my
"I don't
mind.
understand that." Right, like, and it speaks to his desire to make an action film, and that's what this
Mm-hmm.
film is. I think it's like it is this cocktail of things that have been gestating for so long.
Yeah. I feel like he's like playing, like the way that he's made all those music videos for a while, like sort of in between, like in the 5 years in between, he just starts like doing his own thing. Like he's just like, hey, this is what I want to do. And I think that's what this film felt like a little bit for me. He was just like, yeah, like this is kind of what I'm into. I'm not trying to impress anyone. I'm not trying to make a perfect film. This is just like what I'm having fun doing. But I don't think it really lands that way. Like I feel like it's just like his playtime. I still love him, but
Yeah, There Will Be Blood. When that ended, everybody, you walk out, you go
oh
masterpiece,
my
right? It
God.
just so happens
Yeah.
that No Country was the same year, which for me is also a masterpiece.
I think Eastern Promises as well was that year, if I'm not
Oh,
mistaken.
So good. That year
Yeah.
ruled. That
Mm.
year's an amazing
Yeah.
year. That fall was fantastic. Just so many delights at the movie theater. Eastern Promises rule so hard.
Yeah.
I haven't seen that in a while.
A History of Violence is coming out in 4K soon. Cannot wait. I love that movie so
Okay.
much.
Yeah.
That is a good one.
Yeah. Yeah.
Rohim, hey, perfect.
I mean, I noticed at the end who the film's dedicated to, and his wife is listed there, and a bunch of other names are as well. I'm assuming they're his children. I do not know,
He
but
has four kids, so
okay,
I
yeah.
think those were, yeah, I think I saw that too.
And I feel, I don't know if I'm making this up or if I did read it somewhere. I think, something for us to consider perhaps is the autobiographical nature of this film, or,
Hmm.
I mean, he's married to Maya Rudolph, biracial woman,
Hmm.
daughter of the great Mimi Ripperton, and so, what are the dynamics there? His children to be biracial,
Hmm.
and that sits, that's a major element in this story as well. So, I'm curious about, those dynamics, as well as, fathers and daughters and things like that.
Hmm.
So
And the
I don't
moment,
know.
right? the moment for me, like while in the theater when Chase Infinity appears on film, the first thought was she looks like she'd be Maya Rudolph's daughter. That was my first thought. So I don't
Yeah,
know how,
for
I
a
can't
second I thought
imagine.
like, is that actually his daughter that he cast? And then I realized like, oh, that can't be. But yeah, I definitely felt that throughout the film. I was like, he's like exercising some, or that's not really the right word, but like expressing some feeling of father-daughter, or wanting his daughters represented in a certain
Yes.
way, or what that, multiracial experience is like, whatever it is. I definitely felt like he wanted to represent his family on screen in some way. And I don't know that it really worked. Like, if that's all that it was about, like, did it really land? But I can appreciate what he was trying to do.
When
Agreed.
watching the film, I was reminded of it came back to me an interview he did with Terry Gross for Fresh Air for The Phantom Thread, and he was saying in that interview that before the interview he was getting ready in the morning and typically just throws on a pair of pants, a shirt,
Mhm.
and his I think it was his eldest daughter like needed to get to school and she's like, come on dad, come on, come on, come on, right? And sorry Eugene, I'm clapping my hands. And she was getting irritated with him because he was super anxious. He wanted to dress nice for Terry Gross, he was saying. But the way that he tells the story, the dynamic with his daughter, it was joyful to listen to at the time, and it came to me while watching the dynamic on screen between Ghetto Pat and Willa. In some ways, I'm like, is he like am I just bringing this up since the one story I heard him tell, or is this ringing true in some kind of way?
And by the way, going back to this movie in Sinners, I mean, let's talk about two all-time movie debuts. Miles Cadden in Sinners. I mean, he's really, the heart and soul of that film. And then Chase Infinity here. I mean, what a revelation for this to be her first film. I mean, I thought she was absolutely tremendous.
Absolutely. And Miles Cadden will be a very good chance we overlooked for during award season, but
Absolutely.
we'll see.
What a shame. Yeah.
Don't want to that film will speak for itself forever. So as long as cinema lives.
Yes, yes.
I my buddies were when they saw it, they were like, "Whoa, you didn't love this movie?" And William Goldman's in it, and William Goldman's in it, excuse me. And the moment he showed up, I was like, "This is what I
I mean,
loved."
Tony
Again,
Goldwyn? Is that what you're
one
talking
final
about?
thing. What was
Tony
that?
Goldwyn? Who's
Thank you,
William
Tony
Goldwyn?
Goldman.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, yeah,
I
Tony
thought it was
Goldman. Yeah.
okay.
Um, what one thing I do love, is the way that PTA is able to his casting rules, the casting of the Crusaders, right? All of them in that room, they were perfect. It was perfect casting. So all right,
Agree.
that's it. The bad guy from I'm forgetting his name, the bad guy from K-9 with Jim Belushi, right? He's the patriarch. And
He's the
he's in
older
another
guy.
film. He's another yeah, he's another
Okay.
film, the patriarch of
Mhm.
the Crusaders. And there's another film he plays a slime ball in so many films, but I'm forgetting one
He's
right
John
now.
Locke's dad in Lost.
Thank you. He's John Locke's dad in Lost.
Oh,
Yep, that was
that's
it. That
probably
was
why he looks familiar to me. Okay. It's like, I
yep,
know this
yep.
guy.
That's right. That's right.
Okay.
I was thinking there is something else too, but I can't remember. But I don't know. Oh, right. The only time he ever played that in a film that I've seen a decent person is he's the bar owner in Roadhouse who hires Patrick Swayze. And in the whole movie, you're thinking he's going to be like a dirtbag. He's going to turn heel, and he doesn't because he always does. Yeah, he hires Patrick Swayze to clean up the bar in Roadhouse.
Right.
I love that film.
I haven't had the pleasure of seeing it.
Oh, it is a pleasure, Leah. It is
Is
such a
it?
pleasure.
Okay.
All right, Eugene. Well, all right, come on, Eugene. Final thoughts.
It was fine.
Eugene thought it was fine.
You guys said it all already. I pretty much agree with all the points that you guys have made. I think maybe like the only thing that, there are a lot of things that I saw in the film while I was watching it that I personally was uncomfortable with, but I think it's because of me knowing, like having contextual knowledge of history and my own personal experiences. And I do feel like somebody else who didn't have my experiences would have, could easily go into that movie seeing something completely different. Like one of those examples was just I really didn't like how it felt like Leo's character was being portrayed, in spite of his being a mess, that, he was kind of like a lovable guy kind of thing. And for me, I kind of felt like he was emblematic of all of us in this moment kind of being asleep at the wheel and not rising up to the occasion. And then being like, okay, go off, daughter, go out and fight the battles, while I just sit here and I had forgotten my code word. I had forgotten my history. I've forgotten everything. And so I felt like, well, that's not great. That's not a great light for this guy to be in, and yet he's the one kind of being lauded as, a nice guy in the film. And of course, I did want to see much more of Sensei Sergio, but we only got a short time with him.
Yeah, I think that's such a profound statement that Eugene said, and we were talking about it like after the movie. I thought that was such a brilliant hot take. And I think I hope that's one of the takeaways of PTA, which is, who are we in this moment? And the sheer powerlessness, because the one thing that I think can be representative of like what you were saying, and then also what we were just talking about with like the parental relationship, like the sheer powerlessness of being a parent in today's world, especially a parent of like a child who's marginalized in a lot of different ways, whether it be like a woman or a woman of color, and then also just not being prepared for the moment because you forgot your footing or you thought you had something that you didn't.
But I do also love the bureaucracy of that whole, like when he's trying to get the password and he's just dealing with this guy on the other end who's just like some guy on a phone. Like, I don't know. I just thought that was also commenting on, yeah, just even these like revolutionaries are just sort of like, but you don't need the password and you didn't, you have to like do it just right. And I don't know. I just thought that was kind of a funny
A
commentary
revolutionary
on that.
bureaucrat.
Right, exactly. He was
But
like,
in
"Come on,
fairness,
man."
you need to know the password. You can't you live and
It's
die on the
it's
password.
true. No, it's true. But I just
I
thought
mean,
that
no,
was
but no, no,
funny.
no, no. A couple of things. Yes, you need to know the password, but then if you don't know the password, there's always someone to talk to who will be able to find out that he is legitimate
Right. Which
and he is
ultimately
who
is
he's
what
saying he is, right? It's
happened. And
those,
the guy was
it's that,
just
it's
like,
those,
nope.
right, right, eventually, right.
100%. 100%. I'm going to say 100% Michael, and I'm going to say Leah, maybe 85%. Neither one of you guys would let the person in if they didn't know the password. You guys would be like,
It's
sorry,
true, but then
no.
you get the guy, you get your
No,
manager
no,
who
no,
knew the
no.
guy, and you ask the
I would
question that
be,
I
needs to be
would,
asked.
but by the second or third call, I would be like, hey, this guy sounds pretty convincing. Can someone talk to him?
Right.
No.
He's just
Michael,
not thinking.
if I was
He's
calling
using his
Michael with the
power because he
password,
feels like he knows. Sorry, go ahead.
if I was
Yes, if
calling
you were
Michael with
calling
the
for the password,
password,
be like, I would
you'd
have,
be
I
like,
would have
no.
hung up on you within seconds. No,
Yes.
you
Yeah. Michael would
don't
100,
wait, don't
even if I'm
waste
like,
your time.
it's
Don't waste your
me.
time telling me who you are. Remember the password.
Right. Exactly. 100%. I would be done.
Unwrapped Finally is hosted by Michael Lavalio, Leah Shell, and Patrick Lavalio. Produced by me, Eugene Mock. Got a question or a hot take for the Unwrapped Pod team? Email unwrappedfinallypodcast@gmail.com. Your message could be featured on a future episode. And if you haven't already, give us a follow wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks for listening. See you next time.